What would you do if you discovered that someone was practicing their most confident voice in the reflection of your car window? Jonathan never imagined that this sweltering afternoon in downtown Chicago, while waiting for his driver in the back seat of his luxury sedan, would witness the most genuine moment that would transform his existence forever. A young flower seller, unaware she was being watched, rehearsed her greeting over and over in the tinted glass of his window. What happened next was beautiful beyond words. If this story touches your heart, consider joining our community by subscribing to the channel where we share stories that remind us of the goodness that still exists in this world. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the streets of downtown Chicago, turning the concrete into a scorching surface that made the hot air dance like mirages rising from the ground. Jonathan Mitchell settled into the back seat of his latest model vehicle, feeling the relief of the air conditioning that contrasted dramatically with the furnace that the city had become at that precise moment. At his 35 years of age, he had learned to appreciate the small luxuries that his fortune allowed him. Yet he always maintained a sense of humility that kept him grounded in reality despite his success. Marcus, his driver and trusted friend of many years, had stepped out just a few minutes earlier toward the corner store to purchase cold bottles of water, promising to return shortly before the traffic light changed again. The entrepreneur watched distractedly at the movement of the street through the tinted windows when something captured his complete and undivided attention in a way nothing had in years. A feminine figure approached slowly toward his vehicle, but it was not a common approach like those he had witnessed countless times before. The young woman seemed to be searching for something in her own reflection, something that went beyond mere vanity or casual curiosity. Jonathan felt an immense curiosity wash over him as he realized that the girl could not see him from outside due to the dark tinting, but he had a perfect view of each and every one of her movements, every gesture, every subtle shift in her expression. Rebecca Torres walked along the sidewalk with tired steps, yet there was something determined in her gait, something that spoke of inner strength despite obvious exhaustion. She carried a wooden basket filled with fresh flowers that she had arranged since very early in the pre-dawn hours of that morning. Her 31 years had not been easy, especially after having arrived from the suburbs with dreams that had slowly transformed into harsh realities that tested her spirit daily. The heat was oppressive and overwhelming, and she felt how the sweat formed on her forehead and neck, but she knew with absolute certainty that she could not return home with empty hands and an empty heart. Once again, she stopped in front of the elegant car, not because of any interest in the vehicle itself or its obvious worth, but because the tinted glass offered her the perfect reflection she needed for what she was about to do, for the ritual she had developed over months of struggle. Without imagining for even a second that someone on the other side was watching her every move, Rebecca began to arrange her hair with delicacy and care, running her fingers through the strands that had become disheveled with the hot wind that swept through the city streets relentlessly. She adjusted the collar of her simple but clean blouse, straightened her posture to appear more confident than she felt, and took a deep breath, preparing herself mentally and emotionally to face the rest of this challenging day that stretched before her like an endless road. It was a ritual she had developed in recent months, using any reflective surface available to compose herself and gather the courage and strength she needed to continue forward when every fiber of her being wanted to give up and retreat. But what came next surprised even her in its vulnerability and honesty. The young woman stared intently at her reflection in the glass and began to rehearse a greeting as if she were preparing for the most important performance of her life, as if those words carried the weight of her survival and dignity. First, she attempted a shy smile accompanied by a soft, "Good afternoon," then a warmer, more inviting one with "beautiful flowers for a beautiful day," and finally a more confident approach with "fresh flowers to brighten your home, sir." Jonathan, from inside the climate-controlled sanctuary of his vehicle, observed fascinated by this scene so intimate and so pure that it felt almost sacred to witness. Each gesture Rebecca made revealed a beautiful vulnerability that touched something deep within him. But it also revealed an inner strength and resilience that captivated him immediately and completely. This was not vanity he was witnessing, nor was it pretense or artifice. but rather the preparation of a woman who was arming herself with courage to face the world with the best of her weapons, which was a sincere greeting paired with genuine warmth. The businessman felt how his heart began to beat faster than it had in years, experiencing a sensation and an emotion that he had not known or felt in what seemed like an eternity. There was something about this woman that transcended her natural beauty, something that went far deeper than physical appearance. There was an inner light that shone even in the midst of the difficult circumstances she was evidently traversing day after day without complaint or bitterness. It was like observing an angel who was preparing to bless the world with her presence, completely unaware that she was already blessing the life of someone else in that very moment. Someone who desperately needed to witness such purity. The greeting that Rebecca finally chose was perfect in its simplicity and warmth. Genuine, without being forced, full of hope, despite everything she had surely endured. She held her head high with dignity that no circumstance could steal from her, adjusted the basket of colorful flowers on her arm with practiced ease, and prepared to continue on her way with renewed determination. But Jonathan could no longer remain as a simple spectator of this scene that had touched the deepest fibers of his soul and awakened something he thought had died long ago. He had seen beautiful women throughout his entire life, had known society ladies who moved in his circles, and had dated models whose faces graced magazine covers. But never had he witnessed something so authentic and real as this moment unfolding before his eyes. The simplicity of the gesture, the honesty of the preparation, the strength that emanated from that greeting rehearsed with so much care and dedication to a craft most would consider beneath notice. All of this had been engraved in his heart like a permanent mark that would never fade regardless of time or distance. He knew with absolute certainty that if he let her walk away without at least knowing her name, without at least hearing her voice directed at him, he would regret it for the rest of his days on this earth. His hand moved instinctively toward the button that controlled the windows of the vehicle, while his mind struggled between reason that told him not to interfere in her world, and his heart that screamed at him not to let her escape from his life. His index finger rested on the switch, trembling slightly from the intensity of the moment and the weight of the decision. The glass began to descend slowly, breaking forever the invisible barrier between two worlds that were destined to find each other in this unlikely intersection of fate. The soft hum of the electric motor lowering the window cut through the air like an unexpected whisper, causing Rebecca to startle visibly and take an instinctive step backward, her eyes widening with surprise. Her heart accelerated rapidly as she realized with mortification that she had been rehearsing her greeting in front of someone's car, and for a fleeting moment, she felt deeply embarrassed thinking about what that person might have seen or heard. Her cheeks flushed with a natural blush that made her look even more beautiful and endearing, while her eyes grew large with genuine surprise mixed with concern. Jonathan, observing her reaction from the interior of the air-conditioned vehicle, felt an immense tenderness wash over him as he saw how she had been frightened without losing her natural composure or dignity, even in her embarrassment. The window continued descending until it revealed partially the face of the businessman, who offered her the warmest and most reassuring smile he could form with sincerity. "Please, miss, don't be frightened," were the first words that emerged from his lips with a soft and respectful voice that carried genuine kindness. "It was not my intention to startle you or cause you any discomfort. I only wanted to ask you what you were selling in that beautiful basket of yours." And Rebecca looked at him directly in the eyes, finding in them a sincerity and warmth that calmed her immediately and dispelled her initial fear. There was something in the way this stranger spoke to her that transmitted security and respect rather than danger or ill intent. Something in his gaze that spoke of genuine interest rather than pity or condescension. "Good afternoon, sir," Rebecca responded, with a voice slightly tremulous from nervousness, but maintaining that greeting she had practiced moments before with such dedication. "I sell fresh flowers that I arrange myself every morning before dawn." Jonathan noticed immediately the quality of her voice, which was melodious and educated despite the evident nerves, and he leaned slightly toward the window to see her better and appreciate more fully the person behind the voice. He could appreciate up close the natural beauty of her features, the way the afternoon light caught in her hair. But above all, He noticed the nobility and kindness that radiated from her face and seemed to emanate from her very soul. "Fresh flowers?" he asked with genuine interest that was not feigned or polite, but real. "What kind of flowers do you arrange, if you don't mind me asking?" Rebecca approached a little closer to the car, becoming gradually more animated and comfortable due to the stranger's evident kindness and respectful demeanor. "I make bouquets of roses, lilies, sunflowers, and seasonal wildflowers, sir," she explained with enthusiasm creeping into her voice. "Everything with fresh flowers I select myself at the market before sunrise, and a lot of care and attention to detail." When mentioning the words care and attention, her eyes shined with a special pride that did not escape Jonathan's notice. It was evident and clear that for her, each bouquet was much more than a simple product to sell. It was a small work of art, created with love and dedication to bring beauty into someone's day. "And tell me," he continued with sincere curiosity that grew with each passing moment, "how has your day been going with sales?" The question was simple and straightforward, but the answer that would come would reveal much more than either of them expected in that moment. Rebecca lowered her gaze briefly, as if gathering courage and strength to be honest and vulnerable with this kind stranger. "The truth is, sir, I have not sold anything yet today," she confessed with a mixture of sadness and unwavering determination in her voice. "I have been walking these streets since 7 o'clock this morning, and the heat is very intense, but I cannot return home without having sold at least some flowers to make the day worthwhile." Jonathan felt a knot form in his stomach upon hearing these words spoken with such simple honesty. It was not pity that he felt rising within him, but rather a deep admiration for the honesty and strength of character of this woman who stood before him. "And do you live alone?" he asked with delicacy, without intention of being indiscreet or invasive, but moved by a genuine concern for her well-being and circumstances. "Yes, sir," she responded, lifting her gaze once again to meet his with quiet dignity. "I work alone to support myself and make my way in this city. I don't have family here in Chicago, but I have faith that keeps me going and gives me strength every single day to face whatever comes." The mention of faith did not sound like something repetitive or automatic, but rather like a deep conviction that gave meaning and purpose to her daily struggle against adversity. Jonathan was struck by the naturalness with which she spoke of her faith and her circumstances, without drama or self-pity or any attempt to manipulate his emotions. She was simply a woman who trusted that her efforts would have their reward in time, who believed that her work had dignity and value, regardless of whether others recognized it. "You know what?" said Jonathan after a few seconds of reflective silence, making a decision that felt absolutely right in his core. "I would like to buy some of those flowers that you make with so much care and attention." Rebecca smiled genuinely for the first time since the conversation began, and that smile was even more beautiful and radiant than the one she had rehearsed in the reflection moments before. "Of course, sir. Which ones would you like?" she asked while opening her basket with renewed enthusiasm and hope. Jonathan could see then the contents of her basket. Flowers perfectly arranged, each bouquet wrapped with simple but elegant paper and small ribbons of various colors. It was evident that she put love and dedication into every detail, from the selection of the flowers to their arrangement and presentation. "They all look beautiful," he commented with complete sincerity and genuine appreciation. "But before choosing, I would like to know your name, if you would permit me that small privilege." "My name is Rebecca Torres," she responded with a small inclination of her head that spoke of her upbringing and natural grace. "And I am Jonathan," he replied, extending his hand through the window in a gesture of respect and equality. When their hands touched in the greeting, both felt a special connection, as if they had been destined to meet in this exact moment, at this specific intersection. It was a simple handshake, but it was charged with a meaning that neither of them could fully explain or understand in that instant. But what Jonathan was about to propose would change not only Rebecca's day, but the complete course of both of their lives in ways neither could have imagined. "Rebecca," repeated Jonathan, savoring the name as if it were poetry. "What a beautiful name for a beautiful person. And tell me, where are you originally from?" if you don't mind sharing." The question opened an emotional floodgate that Rebecca had not expected to face on this ordinary afternoon. Her eyes filled with a bittersweet nostalgia, while her gaze lost itself for a moment in some distant memory that brought both joy and pain in equal measure. "I am from the suburbs, Sir Jonathan," she began with a soft voice laden with meaning and unspoken stories. "From a small town where everyone knows each other and life moves at a slower, simpler pace. There I had my apartment, my childhood friends, my job at the local flower shop where I learned my craft. It was a simple life, but it was happy and fulfilling in its own way." Jonathan noticed how her voice broke slightly when speaking of the past, and he intuitively knew that there was a painful story behind her arrival in the big city. "And what brought you to Chicago?" he asked, with the delicacy of someone who understands that there are wounds that have not yet completely healed and may never fully close. Rebecca took a deep breath, as if preparing herself to open her heart to this stranger who inexplicably inspired trust and understanding in her. "I came for love, Sir Jonathan," she confessed with a sad smile that spoke volumes. "Or for what I believed was love at the time, what I thought would be my happy ending. The story that followed was like a river that had been contained for too long and finally found its outlet, its path to the sea of understanding. I met a man in my town when he came there for work," Rebecca continued, with a voice that grew increasingly firm, as if telling the truth was liberating her from chains she had carried for too long. "He filled my head with beautiful dreams and promises of a life together. He promised me that we would build something wonderful here in the city, that we would create a life full of possibilities." Her eyes shone with the memory of those promises that she once believed were as solid as stone. "He told me I was the most talented florist he had ever seen, that I deserved something better than small-town life, that here we could thrive and be happy together forever." Jonathan listened to each word with complete attention, feeling how his heart filled with indignation toward this man who had played with the pure feelings of Rebecca, without regard for the consequences. "I left everything, Sir Jonathan. I left my job, my little apartment, my friends, my entire life and existence," she said simply. But the simplicity of how she narrated her sacrifice revealed the true magnitude of what she had lost. "I came with him 3 years ago, full of illusions and plans for our future together." Her voice became smaller, but did not lose its inherent dignity. "He told me that first we needed to get established, that marriage would come later, that everything would be perfect, in due time if we were patient. But the promises faded away like smoke in the wind," Rebecca continued, and for the first time in her account, a silent tear rolled down her cheek. "Months passed, then years, and there was always an excuse for why we could not take the next step. Always a reason to delay, always something more important than our relationship." Jonathan felt a contained rage growing in his chest, not toward Rebecca, but toward the coward who had abused her trust and wasted years of her life. "I worked, I supported him emotionally, I waited faithfully every night. I lived only for him, and for that future he had painted so beautifully with his words," she said. The strength with which she related her pain was truly admirable. "Until one day I came home and found his things packed and ready by the door." Her voice broke slightly, but she recomposed herself immediately with visible effort. "He told me he was getting married, but not to me, to a woman from his hometown, to someone his family had chosen for him, someone who fit into his world in ways I apparently never could." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the echo of a betrayal that had forever changed this extraordinary woman's life. "And what did you do?" asked Jonathan with a hoarse voice, fearing the answer, but needing to know the end of this heartbreaking story. "At first I wanted to return to my town," Rebecca responded, wiping the tear with the back of her hand in a gesture that was both vulnerable and strong. "But I felt too much shame to go back defeated after having left everything for a dream that was never real, just an illusion I had created in my mind." Her honesty was moving as she admitted her wounded pride without trying to justify herself. "Besides, I no longer had anything there to return to. They had rented my apartment to someone else, my job at the flower shop had been filled by another person, and my friends had moved on with their own lives and dreams." And Jonathan understood then the magnitude of the loneliness that this woman had faced alone. So I decided to stay and build a new life with my own hands and my own determination, she declared, with a resolve that illuminated her entire face. I learned to arrange flowers better by watching tutorials and taking free classes. I bought supplies with the few savings I had left and went out to the streets to sell my creations. I learned that I was stronger than I ever knew. The transformation in her expression was remarkable and inspiring. From pain, she had moved to strength, from sadness to hope, from victim to survivor. Because I know that life has good plans for me, Sir Jonathan, even though I cannot see them clearly yet, she said with conviction. I know that all this suffering has a purpose, that nothing is wasted, that every tear waters the garden of who I am becoming. And here I am, Rebecca concluded with a smile that was now completely different from the one she had rehearsed in the reflection earlier. Working honestly, not asking anything from anyone, not waiting for anyone to rescue me, building my own story with my own hands, one bouquet at a time. Jonathan looked at her with an admiration that grew with every word she spoke. It was not pity that he felt, but a deep respect toward this woman who had converted her pain into strength, her disappointment into wisdom, her loneliness into fierce independence that commanded respect. Do you know what impresses me most about your story, Rebecca? He told her, with a voice charged with emotion he could barely contain. That after everything that happened to you, after all that betrayal and loss, you still practice your greeting in the reflection of cars, still prepare yourself to face the world with warmth and kindness. She was surprised that he had noticed that intimate detail, that vulnerable moment she thought was private. Because despite everything, you still believe it is worth greeting the world and people with genuine warmth and authentic kindness, still believe that your work matters, that you matter. Their eyes met in a moment of mutual understanding that transcended words and touched something eternal. That greeting I saw minutes ago was not just to sell flowers. It was your way of telling the world that you have not given up, that you still have hope, that you still believe in goodness. And Jonathan knew in that instant that he had found something he did not know he was searching for all these years. A woman of incalculable value whose worth could not be measured in any currency. Rebecca, I would like to buy all your flowers, he said, but not out of pity, which would be an insult to your dignity, but because I believe you deserve to rest from this sun that is burning even the stones on the pavement. Jonathan's words fell upon Rebecca like cool water in the desert, like rain after a long drought. But it was not the offer itself that impacted her most deeply, but rather the manner in which he said it with such respect and genuine concern. All my flowers, sir? She asked with genuine disbelief, not because she doubted his words or his sincerity, but because in 3 years no one had shown such interest in her work or in her as a person. Yes, all of them, he confirmed with a smile that radiated sincerity from every pore. But I want you to understand clearly why I am doing this, what my true motivation is. He leaned a bit closer to the window, close enough so that she could see the honesty shining in his eyes like stars. It is not because your story makes me feel pity, Rebecca, because that would diminish the incredible strength you have shown, he said with conviction. It is because I admire your strength, your honesty, your resilience, and because I believe that a woman who puts so much love and care into what she does deserves to have someone value her effort and recognize her worth. His words did not sound rehearsed or diplomatic or calculated to impress. They flowed directly from his heart without filter or pretense. Besides, he continued with a mischievous smile that softened the intensity of the moment, it is so hot that even the angels would struggle to endure it, and you should be somewhere cool and comfortable, not walking under this merciless sun that shows no compassion. Rebecca felt something strange and unfamiliar in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the heat of the day or the temperature of the air. It was the sensation of being truly seen, of being valued for who she really was, not out of pity or condescension, but out of genuine respect and admiration. Sir Jonathan, I do not know what to say, Rebecca murmured, with a voice trembling with emotion she could barely control. In all these years, selling on the street, walking these sidewalks day after day, no one had spoken to me with such... She searched for the exact word, but emotions clouded her thoughts and made speech difficult. "With such respect," Jonathan completed softly, and she nodded with eyes that were now shining with unshed tears of gratitude. "It is because you deserve it, Rebecca. Any person who works with honesty and maintains their dignity despite difficulties deserves all the respect in the world, and more." He began to take out his wallet from the inner pocket of his jacket, but he did so with slow, unhurried movements, careful not to make her feel pressured or uncomfortable with the transaction. "How much does your entire basket cost?" he asked, while observing the flowers arranged with such obvious care and artistic attention to detail. "They are $150 in total, sir," she responded with a voice barely audible, as if she felt ashamed to charge for her work and labor. "But if that seems like too much, you can take only what you want and leave the rest for other customers." $150, Jonathan interrupted her with a gentle but firm smile. "For flowers made with love and dedication, for the privilege of meeting a woman as extraordinary as you, for witnessing your strength and grace, that seems far too little, almost insulting to the value of what you offer." Jonathan took from his wallet a bill of $300, but before handing it to her, he did something unexpected that would reveal the true depth of his character. "Rebecca, I want you to take this money," he said carefully, "but I also want you to promise me something important." She looked at him with curiosity, mixed with slight nervousness, wondering what condition he might attach to this unexpected generosity. "Promise me that you will go directly to your home, that you will take a cool shower, that you will prepare something delicious to eat, and that you will rest for the remainder of this day," he said. His words were filled with genuine concern that touched Rebecca's heart more deeply than any show of wealth ever could. "Tomorrow will be another day for working and selling your beautiful flowers, but today please take care of yourself the way you deserve to be cared for, the way someone who works as hard as you should be treated." He extended the bill to her through the window with the same naturalness with which he had offered his hand minutes before. "The change is $150, sir," said Rebecca, taking the money with slightly trembling hands that revealed the emotion she was feeling. "There is no change," he responded immediately with finality. "Consider it a bonus for the most beautiful greeting I have seen practiced in years, for your honesty, for your strength." It was not condescension in his voice, but genuine recognition of her worth. "And for allowing me to know your story, which has taught me more about value and dignity in 15 minutes than many people have taught me in years of knowing them." The exchange of money for flowers had transformed into something much deeper and more meaningful. It had become the exchange of mutual respect between two souls who had recognized something special in each other. Rebecca took the basket and began to remove the flower bouquets one by one, handing them to Jonathan through the window with special care, as if each one carried a personal blessing meant specifically for him. "These are roses mixed with baby's breath," she explained as she handed them to him. "These others are lilies with ferns, and these here are my favorites, sunflowers with wildflowers that remind me of home and simpler times." Jonathan received each bouquet as if it were a precious treasure, not because he was particularly fond of flowers, but because they represented the early morning hours that Rebecca had dedicated to creating them with love and artistic vision. "You can tell that you put your heart into everything you do," he commented, while admiring the perfection of each arrangement. "My grandmother always told me that things made with love carry a special energy that people can feel even if they cannot explain it." Rebecca responded with a smile that was no longer rehearsed, but completely natural and genuine. "And I believe she was absolutely right about that." "Your grandmother was very wise," Jonathan agreed, "and you inherited that wisdom, along with your blessed hands, for creating beauty from simple flowers." When the last bouquet was handed over, both remained in silence for a few seconds, as if they intuited that this magical moment was reaching its end, and neither wanted it to terminate so quickly. Rebecca hugged her empty basket against her chest, feeling lighter than she had felt in years, and not only because of the physical weight she no longer carried. "Sir Jonathan," she said with a soft but firm voice, "I want you to know that what you have done today helps me not only financially, which is of course important, She paused a moment, searching for the correct words to express what she felt in her overflowing heart. It helps me remember that there are still good people in this world. People who see beyond appearances and circumstances, who value honest effort and treat others with dignity regardless of their situation. Her eyes filled with tears of gratitude, but they were tears of joy and hope, not of sadness or despair. You have treated me like a lady, like a person worthy of respect, and that is worth more than all the money in the world, more than any material possession. Jonathan felt a lump in his throat upon hearing these words spoken with such sincerity and depth. He had done something simple, something that for him was natural and right. But for Rebecca, it had meant the entire world and restored her faith in humanity. It has been an honor to meet you, Rebecca, he responded with absolute sincerity that resonated in every syllable. And I hope that life continues blessing your path as you deserve, that every door that closed leads to a better one opening. But just at that moment, a familiar sound approached down the street, and what was about to happen would convert this casual encounter into something much more magical and transformative. The sound approaching was that of hurried footsteps on the hot pavement, accompanied by the rustling of plastic shopping bags. Marcus was returning almost running with 2 bags full of cold water bottles, sweat beading on his forehead from the infernal heat and the hurry of not making his employer wait too long in the vehicle. "Mr. Jonathan," he called from a distance, "I apologize for the delay." But there was an incredibly long line at the store that stretched around the block. He approached without realizing that his boss was in deep conversation with a young woman who carried an empty flower basket. When he finally reached the car, he stopped surprised to see the window open and Jonathan conversing animatedly with the flower seller, surrounded by beautiful bouquets of flowers that filled the back seat with color and fragrance. "Marcus, perfect timing," said Jonathan with a genuine smile. "We were just talking about how terrible this heat is and how it affects everyone trying to work outdoors." Rebecca, upon seeing the driver loaded down with water bottles, smiled with tenderness, remembering her own daily struggle against the merciless sun of Chicago summers. "Good afternoon, sir," she greeted with the natural courtesy that characterized her every interaction. Marcus, a man of 53 years with a heart as noble as that of his employer, responded to the greeting with immediate warmth and kindness. "Good afternoon, miss. Goodness, what heat we are experiencing today. Even the birds are seeking shade and refusing to fly in this temperature." "Marcus," said Jonathan, with that tone his friend knew well, the one he used when he was about to do something spontaneous and generous. "Did you bring enough water bottles for everyone?" The driver looked at the bags he was carrying and nodded affirmatively. "Of course, Mr. Jonathan. I brought several varieties. Just as you prefer, even some sparkling water in case you wanted something different." Jonathan then turned to Rebecca with an expression that mixed shyness and determination in equal measure. "Miss Rebecca, I know we have just met, and that this might seem very forward on my part." He paused for a moment, as if evaluating his own words before speaking them into existence. "But would you like to join us for some cold water and perhaps something to eat before you go home? After working all morning in this oppressive heat, you must be exhausted and dehydrated." The proposal fell like lightning in the silence that followed, unexpected and charged with possibility. Rebecca remained completely still, with eyes very wide, processing what she had just heard and wondering if she had understood correctly. Marcus, knowing his employer better than anyone, smiled inwardly, recognizing something special and significant in this unusual situation. "Please do not worry," Jonathan continued quickly, noticing her surprise and not wanting her to feel uncomfortable or pressured. "It would only be nearby, at the cafe on the corner, nothing fancy or complicated, just to get out of this sun that is literally melting the asphalt beneath our feet." His voice carried a sincerity that made it impossible to misinterpret his intentions as anything but kind. "And to make sure you are properly hydrated and nourished before heading home after such a long morning of work in these conditions." Sir Jonathan, I do not know if it would be appropriate," Rebecca murmured, struggling between her conservative upbringing and the genuine desire to accept the invitation from this kind stranger. "You are very kind and generous. But we have only just met and— You are absolutely right, Jonathan interrupted respectfully, not wanting to make her feel pressured or obligated. Forgive my boldness and forwardness. It is just that it is so hot, and I thought that after working all morning under this brutal sun, perhaps you would appreciate some refreshment before going home to rest. There is no pressure or expectation attached to the invitation. There was no pressure in his voice, only genuine concern for her well-being and comfort. Besides, added Marcus with his natural wisdom and perfect timing, the cafe is full of families at this hour, miss. It is a very decent and respectable place, very cool inside with excellent air conditioning. Rebecca looked at both men and saw in their faces only sincere goodness and authentic concern for her welfare. Are you sure it would not be an inconvenience for you both if I accompanied you? She asked with a small voice, like a child asking permission for something special and unexpected. An inconvenience? Exclaimed Jonathan with genuine surprise. It would be an honor and a privilege for us, Rebecca. A true gift to spend more time in your company. The way he pronounced her name, with such respect and warmth, melted her last resistances and reservations. All right then, and she finally accepted, with a shy but radiant smile that lit up her entire face. I would love to have some water, and perhaps a small bite to eat with you both. Marcus discreetly applauded, while Jonathan felt a disproportionate joy for something as simple as sharing refreshments with someone he had just met. The walk to the cafe was short, but revealing of character. Jonathan got out of the car and insisted on walking alongside Rebecca, treating her with the respect and courtesy of a true gentleman, while Marcus followed a few steps behind, carrying the bags of water bottles they no longer needed, since they were going to the cafe. How long have you been working with Mr. Marcus? Asked Rebecca, curious about the familiar dynamic between both men that spoke of something deeper than employer and employee. Marcus does not just work for me, Jonathan explained with warmth. He is one of my closest and most trusted friends. We have been together for more than 12 years, and he knows my quirks and habits better than I know them myself. Marcus laughed from behind them. And I know his generous impulses, Mr. Jonathan. Like when he sees someone who needs help and cannot remain with his arms crossed doing nothing. Is he always this kind and generous? Rebecca asked, turning to look at Marcus with genuine curiosity about this man who had shown her such unexpected kindness. Miss, you have no idea, the driver responded with evident affection toward his employer shining in his voice. Mr. Jonathan has the biggest heart I have ever known in my 53 years on this earth. That is why I respect him so much, not because of his wealth, but because of his character. Jonathan blushed slightly with the praise. Marcus exaggerates, Rebecca. I only try to do what seems right and just in any given situation. That is exactly what makes a person truly good and kind, she responded with a smile that enveloped all three, in a warmth that contrasted beautifully with the oppressive heat of the day and made it bearable. The cafe turned out to be a perfect oasis, with its cool air conditioning, soft music playing in the background, and the sweet aroma of fresh coffee and baked goods filling the air. They chose a table by the window, but protected from the direct sun that beat down mercilessly outside. What would you like to have, Rebecca? Asked Jonathan, while reviewing the menu of beverages and light food offerings. I love fresh lemonade, she responded with eyes shining with simple pleasure at the prospect. But honestly, anything cold would taste like heaven right now after this morning. Then let us order a large pitcher of lemonade, Jonathan decided immediately. So you can drink as much as you want and properly rehydrate after working in those conditions. When the waitress came, they ordered 3 tall glasses of ice-cold lemonade and a selection of fresh sandwiches and fruit, in what had begun as a simple refreshment, transformed into the prelude of something extraordinary and life-changing. You know what? Said Rebecca, after the first sip of the perfectly tart and sweet lemonade. This is the best lemonade I have tasted in years, maybe in my entire life. But it was not really the lemonade itself, it was the context, the company, the kindness, the feeling of being valued and seen as a human being worthy of respect and care. And for us, responded Jonathan, this is the best afternoon we have had in a very long time. Is that not right, Marcus? Without a doubt, Mr. Jonathan, the driver confirmed with a knowing smile. Without a single doubt in my mind. What none of the three imagined was that this simple lemonade would transform into 3 hours of conversation that would change their lives forever and set them on a path none of them had anticipated. Time seemed to stop in that cafe, as if the universe itself had conspired to give them this magical moment away from the demands and pressures of the outside world. What began as simple refreshment to escape the heat transformed into a conversation that flowed with the naturalness of souls that recognize each other after a long search. Jonathan discovered that Rebecca was not only beautiful on the outside, but that she possessed a depth of character and spirit that captivated him more with each passing minute. "You know what strikes me most about you, Rebecca?" he asked while they savored their second round of lemonade. "It is that despite everything you have lived through, all the pain and betrayal, you speak of faith with such naturalness, as if it were as essential as breathing." She smiled with that special light that appeared every time she spoke of what sustained her through the darkest times. "It is because faith is what keeps me going, Jonathan," she responded with the simplicity of someone stating an absolute truth. "When I had no one to talk to, I talked to God. When I did not know what to do next, I asked Him to guide my steps. And when everything seemed lost and hopeless, He gave me the strength to keep moving forward one day at a time." Marcus, who had remained discreetly silent for much of the conversation, nodded with deep respect and recognition. It was evident that this young woman's faith was not something superficial or performative, but rather the very foundation of her strength and resilience. "And you never got angry with God for what happened with that man who betrayed you?" Jonathan asked with genuine curiosity, amazed by the serenity with which Rebecca spoke of her pain and loss. "At first, yes," she confessed without shame or pretense. "I spent several months very resentful and bitter, asking him why he had allowed someone to hurt me so deeply." Her eyes lost themselves for a moment in the memory of those dark days, but her expression remained peaceful. "But then I understood that God had not abandoned me in my suffering, but rather had freed me from something much worse than the pain of that moment." The spiritual maturity with which she processed her suffering left both men speechless and deeply moved. "Something worse?" Jonathan asked gently, wanting to understand her perspective more fully. "Yes," Rebecca responded with a smile that revealed wisdom earned through fire and tears. "He freed me from living my entire life with a man who did not value me, who was not capable of loving truly and faithfully." Her perspective was so clear and so healing that Jonathan felt an admiration that grew until it transformed into something much deeper and more profound. "God closed that door to open better ones, doors I could not have walked through if I had stayed in that situation," she continued with absolute conviction that radiated from her very being. "And although at the time it hurt more than anything I had ever experienced, now I can see it was a blessing in disguise, a painful gift that set me free." Marcus murmured a soft "Amen," infected by the unshakable faith of this extraordinary woman who had turned suffering into wisdom. "And what does God tell you when you speak to Him?" Jonathan asked, fascinated by the personal relationship that Rebecca had with the divine. "He tells me to have patience, that He has beautiful plans for me that are beyond anything I can currently imagine," Inji responded with eyes shining with hope and expectation. "That everything I have lived through is preparing me for something better and more wonderful than I can conceive in my limited human understanding." Her words fell on Jonathan's heart, like seeds in fertile soil, finding a place to take root and grow. "That is why every day I wake up early, arrange my flowers with love and gratitude, and go out to work with a smile and hope," she explained, while gently touching the table with her fingers as if accompanying the rhythm of her thoughts. "Because I know that each day is an opportunity that God gives me to move closer to that future He has prepared specifically for me. A future I cannot see yet, but trust is coming." Jonathan listened hypnotized, not only by her words, but by the light that emanated from her entire being when she spoke of her faith with such conviction and peace. "You are teaching me something very important today, Rebecca," he told her, with a voice full of emotion he could not hide. "You are showing me what it means to have true faith, not just in words that sound nice, but in the heart where it truly matters and transforms everything." She looked at him with genuine surprise. I am teaching you something, Jonathan? Of course you are, he confirmed, with total sincerity. I have many material blessings and advantages, more than most people could dream of. But I had lost that beautiful connection that you have with God and with faith itself. It was a vulnerable confession that revealed the humility and honesty of his character. Sometimes I focus so much on business matters, on numbers and profits, on solving problems and making deals, that I forget to be grateful for what I have and to trust in something greater than my own efforts and abilities. Rebecca listened to him with complete attention, feeling how the roles were reversing. And now she was the one who could offer something valuable and meaningful to this successful but spiritually hungry man. You know what? She told him with sweetness and gentle wisdom. God put you in my path today to remind me that He always has beautiful ways of taking care of me. Ways I could not have planned or orchestrated myself. Her eyes filled with tears of gratitude for this unexpected blessing. And perhaps He put me in yours to remind you that He is taking care of you too, in ways you maybe have not noticed or acknowledged because you have been too busy to see them clearly. Jonathan felt a lump forming in his throat upon hearing these words spoken with such gentle certainty. You're right, he murmured, with a hoarse voice thick with emotion. Today itself is proof of that divine care. Meeting you was not random chance or mere coincidence. Exactly, she confirmed with a radiant smile. Nothing is random when you believe that there is a loving hand guiding everything according to a perfect plan we cannot fully understand. Marcus, moved by the depth of the conversation unfolding before him, decided to contribute his own perspective. Miss Rebecca, in all the years I have known Mr. Jonathan, I had never seen him so complete, so at peace, he said. The driver paused, searching for the right word. So genuinely happy, as if he had found something he did not even know he was missing all these years. The hours continued passing without any of the three noticing how quickly time was flying. They talked about dreams that seemed impossible but worth pursuing, about fears that kept them awake at night, about hopes that sustained them through difficult days, about that mysterious way in which God works silently to prepare hearts that are destined to find each other and build something beautiful together. Rebecca shared her plans of someday having a small flower shop where she could create arrangements not just to survive, but to bring joy and beauty into people's lives and special occasions. Jonathan spoke of his desire to use his fortune for something more meaningful and lasting than simply generating more wealth and accumulating more possessions. You know what is most beautiful about all of this? Rebecca asked while finishing her third glass of lemonade. That God used my need to practice a greeting, something so small and seemingly insignificant, to unite our paths in this unexpected way. The observation was so profound and so true that it left both men silent for several seconds. It is true, Jonathan responded with awe and wonder. If you had not been rehearsing that greeting in the reflection of my car window, I never would have had the courage to open the window and speak to you. And if you had not opened that window, she continued, I would still be thinking that all the people in this city are indifferent to the suffering and struggles of others, that kindness is dead in the modern world. They looked into each other's eyes in a moment of mutual understanding that transcended words and touched something eternal and true. God has very mysterious ways of writing beautiful stories, Rebecca murmured, with a smile that illuminated the entire cafe and seemed to make even the afternoon sun outside pale in comparison. But when they finally looked at the clock on the wall, they realized that the afternoon had flown by, and reality was about to remind them that fairy tales sometimes have to pause so that real life can continue its course. When they finally looked at their watches and the clock on the cafe wall, the afternoon had already given way to the first golden tints of approaching evening. My goodness, exclaimed Rebecca with genuine surprise. It is already 6 o'clock in the evening. Time has flown by so quickly. Time had passed inexplicably fast, as if they had been in a different dimension where hours did not carry the same weight or meaning as in the ordinary world. I cannot believe we have been here for so long, murmured Jonathan with a mixture of astonishment and sadness. Astonishment at how rapidly the time had passed, and sadness because he knew this magical moment was coming to an end, and he did not want it to finish. Marcus smiled, with the wisdom that comes from years of observing human nature. When the conversation is good and the company is even better, time always becomes short and insufficient, he commented, while beginning to gather the empty glasses from the table. But I suppose Miss Rebecca must be tired after so much walking under the morning sun and needs to rest. It was his subtle way of reminding them that although the moment had been beautiful and special, reality had its own demands and responsibilities. Rebecca nodded with a melancholic smile, feeling how the spell of the afternoon was beginning to dissipate slowly like morning mist. "You are right, I should head home now," she said with a soft voice, though every fiber of her being wanted to stay longer in this bubble of unexpected happiness. "Of course," Jonathan responded immediately, standing up like the gentleman he was. "But before you go, please allow me at least to give you a ride to your home." The offer emerged from his heart, without thinking twice, moved by the genuine desire to ensure she arrived safely to her destination. "It is the least I can do after having kept you here all afternoon, when you should have been resting after your hard morning of work in that brutal heat." Rebecca looked at him with eyes full of gratitude, but also with a gentle determination that revealed her independent character and strong sense of self. "You are very kind, Jonathan, but I prefer to go alone if you do not mind," and she responded with politeness but firmness that commanded respect. "Alone?" he asked, unable to hide his surprise and concern. "But it is getting dark, and you are a young woman walking alone through the city streets." "Jonathan," Rebecca interrupted him with sweetness but absolute conviction in her voice, "I have been walking alone through this city for 3 years now. I know very well how to take care of myself and stay safe." Her response did not sound defensive or harsh, just simply honest and matter-of-fact. She was a woman who had learned to depend on herself, and she was not willing to relinquish that hard-won independence. Not even for someone as kind and well-intentioned as Jonathan. Rebecca's response impacted Jonathan more deeply than she could have imagined in that moment. He did not feel offended or rejected by her words. On the contrary, he felt an even greater admiration toward this woman who knew how to establish healthy boundaries without being rude or harsh, who valued her autonomy without being proud or arrogant, who appreciated kindness without becoming dependent or needy. "You are absolutely right," he said after a few seconds of thoughtful reflection, "and I respect you enormously for that strength and independence. Your ability to stand on your own is admirable." His response revealed the emotional maturity of a man who truly understood and valued feminine strength and autonomy. "But at least allow me to pay for a taxi to take you to your home," he insisted, with genuine concern that came from a place of care. "Not because I do not trust your ability to take care of yourself, but because I care about your safety and want to know you arrived home well." Marcus observed the interaction with a discreet smile, recognizing in his employer a man who had found someone truly special and worth knowing better. "Jonathan," Rebecca responded with a smile that could melt the hardest heart, "I live nearby, barely 15 minutes walking from here, and walking helps me think, process my day, and be grateful for the blessings I have received." She moved a little closer to him, establishing that meaningful eye contact that had marked their entire conversation from the beginning. "Besides," she added with a touch of playfulness in her eyes that made his heart skip, "after so much lemonade and food, a walk will do me good and help me digest everything." "If you are certain," Jonathan murmured, clearly struggling between his desire to protect her and his respect for her decisions and independence. "I am certain," she confirmed with firm but kind conviction. "But I thank you very much for the concern and care. It makes me feel—" She searched for the exact word, and when she found it, her eyes filled with a special light. "It makes me feel cared for in a way I have not felt in a very long time." Those words struck Jonathan's heart with unexpected force and intensity. "Then all right," he finally accepted, though reluctantly. "But please promise me you will be very careful on your way home and stay aware of your surroundings." "I promise," she responded with seriousness, understanding that his concern was genuine and came from a good place. She then turned to Marcus with a warm and grateful smile. "Mr. Marcus, thank you so much for your kindness and for sharing this beautiful day with me. It has been a true pleasure to meet you." "The pleasure has been entirely mine, Miss Rebecca," the driver responded with sincerity and warmth. "I hope that life continues to bless you abundantly in everything you do." "And may it bless you as well," she replied, and both men felt that this blessing came straight from her heart and carried real weight. The moment of farewell had arrived, and none of the three knew exactly how to handle it properly. It was charged with emotions unspoken, with connections that had been born in just a few hours, but felt as if they had existed since the beginning of time. "Rebecca," said Jonathan with a slightly trembling voice, "I want you to know that this has been one of the most special days of my entire life." She felt her heart accelerate upon hearing these words, spoken with such vulnerability and honesty. "For me too, it has been very special, Jonathan," she responded, with absolute honesty that shone in her eyes. "Not only because you helped me with the sale of my flowers, which was wonderful, but because—" She paused, as if the next words were too intimate to be spoken aloud. "Because what?" he asked softly, encouraging her to continue and complete her thought. "Because you restored my faith that there are still good people in this world," she confessed, with tears of gratitude forming in her eyes. "People who see the soul before the circumstances, who treat others with respect before judging them based on appearance or situation." Jonathan felt a lump in his throat that almost prevented him from speaking clearly. "It has been you who taught me today what true wealth really means," he managed to articulate finally. "And that wealth cannot be counted in dollars or possessions, but in moments like this one we have shared." Rebecca moved away, walking slowly along the sidewalk, turning once to wave goodbye with her hand, without imagining that Jonathan would remain standing there watching until he lost sight of her completely, with his heart beating in a way he had never felt before in his life. The following 4 days were a sweet torture for Jonathan that tested his patience and resolve. Each morning, he woke with Rebecca's face engraved in his mind like a photograph he could not erase. Each afternoon, he remembered her words, full of wisdom and faith. Each night he fell asleep thinking of that rehearsed greeting that had changed his life forever in ways he was still discovering. He tried to concentrate on his business meetings and important negotiations, but his mind flew constantly toward that cafe, where he had discovered what a true conversation meant, what real connection felt like. "Mr. Jonathan," Marcus told him each morning, upon seeing him distracted in the car, "do you not think you should look for her and try to see her again?" But Jonathan resisted and struggled, fighting between his desire to see her again and his respect for the space she had established with such elegant clarity. "I do not want to seem like a stalker or make her uncomfortable, Marcus," he responded invariably. "She was very clear that she preferred to go home alone, that she knew how to take care of herself. I must respect that boundary and her wishes. However, during the nights when he was alone in his mansion, full of luxuries but empty of human warmth and genuine connection, he wondered if he had correctly interpreted the signals, if that brightness in Rebecca's eyes had meant the same thing he had felt in his heart. Meanwhile, Rebecca lived exactly the same dilemma from her small apartment across the city. Rebecca woke every dawn at 5 in the morning to arrange her flowers and prepare for another day, but now the process had a different flavor and meaning. While she selected the freshest blooms and created new arrangements, she remembered every word they had exchanged, every gesture of respect Jonathan had shown her, every moment when she had felt valued as a woman and as a human being worthy of dignity. "Dear God," she prayed while arranging roses and lilies into beautiful bouquets, "if this man came into my life according to your will and perfect plan, give me a clear sign of what I should do next." She went out to sell her flowers through the same streets as always, walking the familiar routes she had traveled hundreds of times before. But her eyes unconsciously searched for an elegant car with tinted windows, hoping against hope. Every similar vehicle she saw made her heart accelerate for a brief second, only to be immediately disappointed when it was not him. "This is foolish," she told herself repeatedly. "I barely know him. We only spent one afternoon together." But no matter how much she tried to convince herself to be practical and realistic, her heart had its own reasons that reason did not understand or could explain. The hours passed slowly, the sales continued being difficult and discouraging, but now there was something different in her routine that gave her a small spark of hope. Every day, after walking through the streets selling her flowers, she headed to the cafe where they had shared those 3 magical hours of connection. At first, Rebecca told herself that she went to the cafe only because it was near her sales route, or because it was hot and she needed to cool down in the air conditioning. But the truth was much deeper and more honest than these surface excuses. She sat in exactly the same table where they had conversed, ordered the same flavor of lemonade they had shared, and relived every moment of that perfect afternoon in her memory. It is just that here I feel closer to God, she justified mentally to herself. Here was where I felt him showing me that there are good people in the world, that kindness still exists. But deep in her heart she knew there was something more, something she was not quite ready to name or acknowledge. Every day she stayed there for exactly 1 hour, from 4 until 5 in the afternoon, as if her soul knew something her mind had not yet fully processed or accepted. The waitress already knew her and always saved the same table for her, smiling with feminine complicity upon seeing the silent hope in Rebecca's eyes. "Waiting for someone special?" the waitress had asked on the second afternoon with knowing kindness. "Just enjoying the peace and quiet," Rebecca had responded. But her blush had betrayed her completely and revealed the truth. The 5th day, Jonathan woke with a different determination burning in his chest. He had spent an entire night without sleeping, struggling with himself and his fears. And finally, he had reached a conclusion that felt absolutely right. "If God put her in my path, I cannot remain with my arms crossed, waiting for destiny to do all the work without any effort on my part," he declared. He dressed with more care than usual, choosing clothes that were elegant but not ostentatious, and told Marcus they had a special mission that day that could change everything. "We are going to look for her, Marcus," he declared, with a mixture of nervousness and determination coursing through his veins. "But Mr. Jonathan," his friend responded with concern and caution, "what if she does not want to see you? What if she thinks you are overstepping boundaries? Then I will accept the rejection like a gentleman and move on with my life." Jonathan answered with a maturity that impressed Marcus deeply. "But I cannot live the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if I had tried, if I had taken the risk of reaching out." They arrived at the same place where they had first met. Exactly at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the exact hour when everything had begun 5 days before. Jonathan got out of the car and began to walk through the nearby streets, searching for her with a hope that grew and faded alternately with each block he covered without success. For a full hour, Jonathan walked every street, every corner, every place where a flower seller might be working or resting. He asked in stores, spoke with other street vendors, described Rebecca a dozen times with as much detail as he could remember. But no one had seen her that particular day. His heart gradually sank into a disappointment he had not experienced in many years. "Mr. Jonathan," Marcus told him upon seeing him return to the car with shoulders drooped and sad eyes. Maybe she did not come out to sell today, or perhaps she changed her route to a different area of the city. But Jonathan felt defeated, as if the universe had played a cruel joke on him by showing him perfection for one day, only to snatch it away forever. "Let us go, Marcus," he said with a tired voice. "I think I am chasing a dream that only existed in my imagination, a fantasy that cannot become reality." Marcus, seeing the genuine sadness of his employer and friend, had an inspired idea born of intuition and hope. "Mr. Jonathan, what if we have some lemonade before we leave? It is very hot today, and that place brings us good memories worth revisiting." It was an apparently innocent suggestion, but Marcus had the intuition that something special might be waiting for them there. "All right," Jonathan agreed without much enthusiasm or energy. "But just one quick drink, and then we go." When they pushed open the door of the cafe, and Jonathan lifted his gaze from the floor, his heart stopped completely and time itself seemed to freeze. There she was. Rebecca was sitting in exactly the same table where they had shared the 3 most beautiful hours of his life, in the same spot by the window. The moment froze in time like a perfect photograph that would be etched in both their memories forever. Rebecca lifted her gaze from her glass of lemonade, and her eyes met Jonathan's through the space of the cafe that separated them. The initial surprise gave way immediately to a joy so pure and so intense that it illuminated her face as if she had seen an angel appear before her very eyes. She stood up so quickly that she almost knocked over the chair behind her, while Jonathan crossed the cafe with steps that seemed to float above the tiled floor as if gravity itself had released its hold. "Jonathan!" she exclaimed with a voice broken by emotion and 4 days of longing contained. And in that cry, there was relief, joy, hope, and something deeper she could not yet name. "Rebecca!" he responded with the same emotional tone, and in his voice there was also 4 nights of insomnia and a heart that had beaten restlessly. Without thinking, without calculating, without either of them planning it consciously, they met in an embrace that was much more than a simple gesture of greeting between acquaintances. It was the recognition of 2 souls that had been searching for each other without knowing it, the moment when their hearts confirmed what their minds still did not dare to fully admit. Marcus, who had witnessed the scene from the entrance of the cafe, smiled with eyes moist with emotion, recognizing that he had just been witness to something truly magical and rare. The embrace lasted barely a few seconds in actual time, but it was so intense that both felt as if they had recovered a part of themselves they did not know they had been missing all these years. When they finally separated, they looked into each other's eyes with a mixture of joy, surprise, and something deeper that neither dared to name yet but both felt with overwhelming intensity. "I cannot believe you are here," Rebecca murmured with tears of happiness shining in her eyes like diamonds. "I have come here every day since." She stopped, blushing as she realized what she had just confessed without meaning to reveal so much. "Every day?" Jonathan asked with astonishment and tenderness, feeling his heart expand inside his chest until it felt too large for his body. "Yes," she admitted, lowering her gaze with shyness and vulnerability. "I sat at this same table every day at the same hour, waiting and hoping." "Waiting for what?" he encouraged gently, moving a little closer to hear her answer. "Waiting to see if you were real," Rebecca confessed with an honesty that surprised them both. "Waiting to see if those moments we lived had been as special for you as they were for me, or if I had imagined the connection between us." Jonathan felt his legs weaken from pure emotion and overwhelming feeling. "Rebecca," he said, taking her hands delicately between his own. "I have thought about you every single minute of these 4 days. I looked for you all over the city for an hour before coming here, walking every street hoping to find you." "You looked for me?" she asked with a trembling voice, unable to believe what she was hearing. "Of course I looked for you," Jonathan responded with an intensity in his eyes that made her shiver. "After meeting you, after those hours we spent here together, how could I possibly continue my life as if nothing had happened, as if you had not changed everything?" Marcus approached discreetly to the table with a smile he could not hide no matter how hard he tried. "Miss Rebecca," he intervened with affection and warmth, "Mr. Jonathan has not slept well a single night since we met you. He talks about you constantly, at all hours." "Marcus," Jonathan protested, blushing but without releasing Rebecca's hands from his gentle grip. "It is the truth, sir," his driver insisted with an affectionate laugh. "And it seems to me that the lady has not slept very peacefully either. Am I right in that assumption?" Rebecca laughed with a mixture of embarrassment and pure happiness flooding through her. "You are right," she admitted freely without shame. "I have not been able to stop thinking about you both, about this place, about everything we talked about and shared." She dared to look directly into Jonathan's eyes, with courage she did not know she possessed. "I felt like I had found my family, like I had finally found my home after years of wandering." Her words fell upon Jonathan's heart, like rain upon parched earth, like water in the desert. "Rebecca," said Jonathan with a voice trembling with emotion he could not control, releasing one of her hands to gently caress her face with tenderness. "I need to tell you something that I cannot keep inside any longer, something that has been burning in my chest." She nodded, preparing herself to hear something she sensed would be important and life-changing. "Since I met you, since I saw that greeting you were rehearsing in the reflection of my car window, I knew you were different from every woman I had ever known in my life," he said. His words flowed directly from his heart without filters or pretense. "But when you spoke of your faith with such conviction, when you shared your story with so much courage and vulnerability, when you taught me what true strength means, Rebecca, I fell in love with you completely and irrevocably." The silence that followed was profound and charged with meaning that seemed to fill the entire cafe. Rebecca felt as if the world had stopped spinning, as if God himself had paused the universe so she could fully process these words that would change everything. "You fell in love with me," she murmured, with a voice almost inaudible, with tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "Deeply, completely, irrevocably in love," he confirmed without hesitation. "With your heart, with your faith, with your strength, with that greeting you practice to bring joy to others, even though you yourself are passing through difficult moments and struggling daily." Marcus moved away discreetly several tables to give them privacy and space, but his eyes shone with emotion as he witnessed this declaration of love unfolding before him. "Jonathan," Rebecca responded with a voice broken by overwhelming happiness, "I also fell in love with you from that very first day." Her words were like celestial music to his ears, like the most beautiful symphony ever composed. "I fell in love with your kindness that came so naturally, with the respectful way you treated me from the very first moment, with how you valued my work without knowing anything about me beyond what you could see." Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke from the depths of her heart. "I fell in love with your humility, despite having so much wealth and success, with your genuine friendship with Marcus that showed your true character, with that beautiful way you listened to me speak of God without judging me or dismissing my faith as foolishness." She moved closer to him, establishing that intimacy that is only possible when two hearts recognize each other completely without reservation. "But above all," she continued with a radiant smile that seemed to light up the entire room, "I fell in love with how you made me feel valued, respected, worthy of true love and genuine affection, deserving of kindness without conditions." And Jonathan felt he could cry from pure happiness and overwhelming joy. "Then this is real?" he asked with a hoarse voice thick with emotion. "This that we feel, what is happening between us, is truly real and not just my imagination?" "It is the most real thing I have felt in my entire life," she responded with absolute certainty and conviction. "And I believe that God planned it this way from the very beginning, that he was writing this story long before we met." They looked at each other for a few more seconds, savoring the reality of their mutual love and the miracle of finding each other. And then Jonathan took a decision that would change their lives forever in the most beautiful way possible. "Rebecca Torres," said Jonathan, with a voice firm but tender, filled with love and hope, "will you come with me and build together that beautiful life that God has prepared specifically for us, the life we were both meant to live?" The proposal from Jonathan resonated in the air of the cafe like a bell of hope, announcing the beginning of something beautiful, lasting, and true. Rebecca looked at him with eyes that shone like stars in the night sky, processing not only the words she had just heard, but the deep meaning of what he was offering her with his whole heart. Not just a physical home with walls and a roof, but a home of the heart where she could grow, love, and be loved unconditionally. "Are you sure about what you are asking me?" she questioned, with a soft voice full of emotion and wonder. "We have only known each other for 5 days, although I feel like I have known you my entire life, like my soul recognized you the moment we met." Jonathan took both of her hands between his, looking at her with an intensity that left no room for doubts about his feelings or intentions. "Rebecca, there are loves that need years to develop and mature." He responded with the wisdom of a man who had finally found his destiny. "And there are others that are born complete in an instant, fully formed and ready." His words carried such sincerity that they dispelled any doubt she might have harbored. "What I feel for you cannot be measured in days or weeks or even years. It is measured in the certainty that you are the woman with whom I want to share the rest of my days on this earth. Besides," he added, with a tender smile that made her heart melt, "God does not consult our calendar or our timelines when he decides to unite two hearts that are made for each other, that fit together perfectly." Marcus, who had been observing from a respectful distance, approached again with eyes moist with emotion and genuine happiness. "Miss Rebecca," he said with a voice charged with paternal affection, In all the years I have known Mr. Jonathan, I have never seen him so complete, so happy, so... He searched for the right word. So authentically himself as when he is with you and in your presence. His words carried the weight of someone who had been a silent witness to years of loneliness, disguised as success and achievement. You know, sir, he continued, now addressing Jonathan directly, since you met this extraordinary lady, you have remembered who you really are deep inside. Not just a successful businessman with money and power, but a man with a noble heart who was waiting for the right woman to show it completely and without reservation. Rebecca felt an immense warmth upon hearing Marcus's words, recognizing in him not just a loyal employee, but a true friend who genuinely wanted Jonathan's happiness and well-being. "And what do you think, Marcus?" Rebecca asked with a playful smile that lit up her entire face. "Do you think I should accept your employer's proposal?" "Miss," he responded with feigned solemnity but a genuine smile. "I think that if you do not accept, Mr. Jonathan is going to cry like a little child, and I do not know what to do with crying men who are heartbroken." The three of them laughed with that spontaneous joy that only arises when happiness is shared among people who truly care for each other. "Jonathan Mitchell," said Rebecca, standing up and looking at him with that smile that had captivated his heart from the very first moment he saw it. "I accept to come with you and build together that life that God has prepared for us, to create something beautiful and lasting." The response was followed by another embrace, but this time it was different from the first one they had shared. This embrace carried the promise of all future embraces, the certainty that they would never be alone again, the blessing of two souls that had finally found their home in each other. "But I have one condition," Rebecca added with that mischievousness that had captivated Jonathan from the beginning. "What condition?" he asked, willing to grant her anything she requested. "That you let me continue making my flower arrangements," she declared with gentle determination. "Because even though I no longer need them to survive financially, I want to continue bringing beauty and joy into people's lives through flowers." Jonathan looked at her with renewed admiration and deep respect. "Of course," he responded immediately without hesitation. "But now we will do them together as partners, and instead of selling them on the street, we will open that flower shop you dream about, the one you have imagined." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears of pure joy and gratitude. "A flower shop?" she murmured, as if she could not believe what she was hearing. "The most beautiful flower shop in all of Chicago," he confirmed with certainty, "where you can create your arrangements with love and freedom, and share that beauty and joy with everyone who enters." The months that followed were like a dream made reality that was lived while wide awake and fully present. Rebecca moved into Jonathan's home, but not as a guest or visitor, but as the legitimate owner of a home that finally had the warmth of a true family and genuine love. They transformed one of the rooms into a special workspace where she could experiment with new arrangements and try different combinations of flowers. And every morning, the house filled with the aroma of fresh flowers and love made tangible. Marcus officially became part of the family, not just as a driver and employee, but as the adopted uncle who gave wise advice, shared daily joys, and celebrated every milestone with genuine happiness. "You know what is most beautiful about all of this?" Rebecca said, while preparing breakfast 8 months later. "That God used my most difficult moment, when I was rehearsing a greeting just to keep going and survive, to bring into my life everything I never dared to ask him for, blessings beyond my wildest dreams." Jonathan embraced her from behind while she cooked, marveling every single day at having this extraordinary woman in his life and by his side. "And he used my loneliness disguised as success and achievement," he responded, kissing her hair with tenderness, "to teach me that true wealth cannot be counted in numbers or possessions, but in moments like these that we share together." The wedding was celebrated exactly 8 months after that first encounter, in a simple but love-filled ceremony in the garden of the mansion, with Marcus as the principal witness, and with the absolute certainty that God had blessed this union from before they themselves knew they were destined to find each other. The morning sun filtered softly through the curtains of the main bedroom of the mansion, illuminating a radiant Rebecca who woke beside the man who had transformed her life in ways she never could have imagined possible in her wildest dreams. 7 years had passed since that hot afternoon when she had rehearsed a greeting in the reflection of a car window, and now each dawn brought new reasons to smile naturally and genuinely, without any rehearsal needed. "Good morning, my love," murmured Jonathan, kissing her forehead softly with the tenderness that had not diminished even a bit in all these years together. "Good morning, my life," she responded with that voice that continued moving him as deeply as it had the very first day they met. They rose together, as they did every morning without fail, to have breakfast on the terrace that overlooked the garden where they had married years before, surrounded by the flowers that Rebecca had planted with her own hands, and that bloomed as a symbol of their growing love and flourishing life together. "You know what I was thinking about," said Rebecca, while serving freshly brewed coffee and pastries she had baked the previous night. "What, my love?" Jonathan asked.